Hey there. Tonight, we're stepping into sandals unlike any you've worn before. The sun is hot, the crowds are restless, and the sea glitters just beyond the hills. This isn't just ancient Galilee. Today, you are Jesus, and thousands are waiting for you to feed them. Before we begin, go ahead and settle in. Dim the lights. Maybe pull the blanket a little higher. This is a quiet journey into a very loud day. And if you enjoy these immersive walks through Scripture, don't forget to like, subscribe, or whisper a thank you to the rain sounds playing behind us. Now close your eyes. The year is around 30 AD. You're standing on a hillside near the Sea of Galilee. You've barely had time to rest, and yet the people keep coming, hungry for healing, for truth, and soon for food. This is what it felt like to carry that weight. Your sandals scuff against the dry earth as you walk toward the shore. John's absence lingers like a bruise that won't fade. The last messenger, your cousin, now silenced. The grief isn't abstract. It's a physical weight pressing between your ribs with each breath. Thirst clings to the back of your throat. The midday heat makes the air waver above the rocky path. You've walked this stretch before, but today your legs feel leaden. Dust coats your feet, mingling with sweat. Every step stirs small clouds that catch in the folds of your robe. The lake ahead should offer respite, cool water to wash your face, silence to collect your thoughts. But even now, you sense the pull of those who need you. The call to teach and heal never rests, not even in mourning. Your fingers brush a sun-warmed rock as you pause. The landscape reflects your inner world, cracked earth, stubborn thistles pushing through barren soil. Rabbis teach that grief can wither the body like drought withers crops. You feel it now, the dry ache behind your eyes, the hollow beneath your sternum. Night prayers normally bring comfort, but lately sleep comes fitfully. When you wake, the loss is fresh each time. Some mornings you climb hills before dawn just to breathe. The quiet moments with the Father restore what crowds and demands deplete. Today was meant for that renewal. But as you raise your head, movement catches your eye. Shadows ripple across the hills, not clouds, but people. Many people. They flow toward the shoreline like a river changing course. A sigh escapes you, heavy but not resentful. You recognize this tension, the human need for rest warring with divine urgency. The same struggle you saw in Moses at the burning bush, in Elijah under the broom tree. Even now your muscles protest. Your mind craves stillness. Yet when a child stumbles at the front of the crowd, your hands twitch forward instinctively. Their hunger isn't metaphorical. You see it in the way a mother sways as she walks, her arms tight around a listless toddler. In the elderly man leaning on his staff, his shoulders sharp beneath his tunic. The disciples murmur behind you. Andrew's voice carries concern about the late hour. Philip calculates the cost of feeding them. Their practicality is a barrier you recognize. You've wrestled it too. But now, something else rises within you, warmer than the sun on your back. Compassion isn't just an idea, it's visceral. A stirring in your gut that spreads upward until your throat tightens. The feeling reminds you of watching wheat sway in the wind, an inevitable motion that can't be stopped once begun. You blink against the glare off the water. The crowd's murmurs reach you now. Questions, coughs, a baby's cry. They smell of sun-baked wool and the faint tang of unwashed skin. A man near the front rubs his stomach absently. His fingers trace the same hollow you've seen in Nazareth's poor after lean harvests. Your own hunger twinges, a reminder of the meal you skipped this morning. But the sensation fades as you study their faces. Sunburned cheeks, chapped lips, eyes that hold more weariness than hope. The disciples tense when you turn to them. They expect you to send the crowd away. It's the sensible thing, but your hands open at your sides, palms tingling with certainty. You catch Andrew's eye and see the moment he understands. His shoulders drop, the resignation of a man about to participate in something beyond reason. A boy pushes through the crowd then, his small hands clutching a cloth bundle. When he offers it, the folds fall open to reveal 5 barley loaves. their rough, uneven surfaces proof of a poor family's baking. 2 fish, dried and salted, nestle beside them. The scent is faint but distinct, the sharpness of the sea preserved. You take the offering. The bread sits warm in your palms, heavier than its size suggests. This is where the fracture happens, where human limits meet boundless grace. Your thumbs brush the loave's cracked surfaces as you lift your face toward heaven. The midday sun kisses your closed eyelids. For a breath, just one, everything stills. The crowd's noise, the disciples fidgeting, even the breeze pauses. Then, a single word forms in your chest, not with your voice, but through you. The weight in your hands shifts. What happens next defies the exhaustion weighing you down. The grief, the dust, the 1,000 logical reasons this shouldn't work. Because when heaven touches earth, even 5 small loaves can rewrite the rules. At first it's just a hum on the edge of hearing, like wind through distant reeds. But the sound grows, resolving into hundreds of overlapping voices. Sand grinds beneath your sandals as you turn. The horizon shimmers with movement. They crest the hill like water breaching a dam. Not walking, but flowing, bodies pressing together in their urgency. Thousands. Farmers still in field-worn tunics, women clutching children's hands, the elderly leaning on sticks. Sunlight glints off their sweating brows as they descend. Their collective need strikes before the dust does. It's tangible, a pressure against your sternum. Somewhere beneath your fatigue flares a spark of frustration. This was supposed to be solitude. Morning time. Yet their faces blur as they near, each one etched with its own hunger. The dust comes next, a golden cloud kicked up by hundreds of sandaled feet. It coats your tongue before you think to cover your mouth. The taste of dry earth mixes with the salt of your sweat. You blink against the grit as the first runners reach you. Young men breathing hard, their eyes bright with expectation. Historical records describe these spontaneous gatherings. Villagers travelling hours when word spread the teacher was near. They came sick, hungry, desperate. Today they move like a living thing, inhaling as they slow before you, exhaling murmurs of relief. The noise surrounds you now, sandals slapping stone, a baby wailing. Someone coughs, a wet, rattling sound. A woman's voice rises above the rest. "Rabbi, my daughter." The sentence snaps as she's jostled backward. Your palms grow damp. Every healer knows this moment. When the crowd's hunger threatens to consume you whole, your muscles tighten, craving escape. But then, a sandal strap breaks near the front. A boy of maybe 8 stumbles. His knee hits sharp gravel before you can react. The crowd flows around him like a river around a stone. No one stops. Except you. You crouch, your robe pooling in the dust. The boy's knee bleeds a thin line down his shin. His breathing hitches, not crying, but close. When your fingers brush his ankle to inspect the damage, he flinches. That's when you see them. Not just the scrape, the ribs visible beneath his tunic, the way his collarbones jut like a fledgling's wings. Hunger has carved lines into his face that no child should bear. He isn't the crowd anymore. Your thumb strokes his ankle, gentler now. His sandal strap is worn to threads, the kind of thing a father might mend if there were time, if there were resources. If the Romans hadn't taken half the village's grain last harvest. Around you, the noise shifts. The crowd senses the pause. They press closer, but differently now. Slower. The boy's mother appears, her calloused hands fluttering near his shoulders. She murmurs thanks without meeting your eyes. Here they are. Not a faceless mass, but individuals. A potter with clay still under his nails. A girl hugging a swaddled infant. An old man whose milky eyes suggest he walked here blind, led only by hope. Their scents mingle, sour sweat, time crushed underfoot, the metallic tang of blood from the boy's knee. Someone nearby smells of fresh fish, another of sheep's wool. The disciples edge forward, forming a half circle at your back. James mutters about the late hour. John eyes the son's position nervously. Practical concerns, human concerns, but your attention stays fixed on the boy. His mother has tied the broken sandal with a strip torn from her headscarf. The fabric is frayed, but clean. She used her best cloth to mend what little they have. The boy tests his footing, then surprises you. He grips your wrist, just for a second, before darting back into the crowd. His palm leaves a smear of dust on your skin. Something about that mark undoes you. When you rise, the crowd's noise seems softer. Their faces hold colours now, amber, olive, cinnamon, instead of a blur of need. You recognise the woman who called out earlier. She stands nearer now, her hands twisted in her apron. The baby in her arms burns with fever beneath its swaddling. To your left, 2 fishermen shift their weight. Their nets sit folded at their feet, abandoned mid-task when someone shouted you'd been spotted. Even the dust settles slowly, catching the golden light as it swirls downward. It coats everything. Their sandals, your robes, the sparse grass clinging to the hillside. The disciples edge closer. Philip clears his throat. The hour grows late, he begins, but you're already peeling back the feverish baby's wrappings. Someone in this crowd has food, perhaps only a scrap wrapped in cloth. A few olives, half a loaf. You glance toward the lake where you'd sought solitude. The water lies still now, reflecting the sky without a ripple. When you turn back, 12 pairs of eyes watch you expectantly. Andrew raises one brow. The boy with the bleeding knee peers from behind his mother's skirt. 1 breath, 2. Then you lift your hands, palms open. The invitation is silent, but understood. The miracle begins here, not when the bread multiplies, but the instant the crowd dissolves into faces, into names, into stories. Fishermen will tell their grandchildren about this day. The feverish baby will grow strong. The boy will forget his skinned knee but remember the teacher's touch. And you let the last of your frustration dissolve like dust in clear water. Bring them here, you say. The child's fingers clutch at your robe before you see his face. The fabric tightens against your thigh as his small weight pulls. When you glance down, his eyes dominate his face too large for his sunken cheeks, the whites tinged yellow at the corners. No words pass between you. None are needed. His dry lips part slightly as he breathes through his mouth. The scent of hunger wafts up sour milk and something metallic like old coins held in a damp palm. Around him, the crowd presses close. Their collective body heats mix the air thick. Unwashed wool smells mingle with wood smoke from distant villages. A woman coughs into her shawl, a deep, rasping sound that shakes her narrow shoulders. Her collarbones stand out like the curve of a clay jar beneath her skin. Her hands reach toward you, but don't grab. They hover palms up, fingers trembling slightly. These aren't demands. They're silent pleas. Some fingertips bear the cracks of labourers who've handled dry barley stalks without enough fat to protect their skin. Others show the calluses of potters or builders, but now they're too thin, the knuckles swollen from lack of protein. Archaeologists find evidence of malnutrition in bone analyses from this era. Shorter statures, evidence of childhood illnesses that only ravage weakened bodies. You see it now in the way a teenager's spine curves forward, as if bearing an invisible yoke, in how elders sit too quickly, their legs unable to support them long. A man lifts his tunic just enough to show the swelling around his ankles, the skin tight as overripe fruit. His wife touches her own hollow stomach in silent communication. They've eaten little but boiled greens and barley gruel for weeks. The signs are everywhere if you know how to look. The slower blinks of the fatigued, the way children don't run, but lean against their parents' legs. The disciples shift uncomfortably nearby. James rubs his own full belly absently. "Rabbi," John murmurs, "send them away before nightfall. The villagers have bread." But you see what they miss. The woman whose fingers keep catching on her own wrist bones as she gestures, the way a farmer's hands shake when he reaches to adjust his head covering. A father who licks cracked lips while watching his children, as if willing his own strength into them. A toddler stumbles into your path, his arms outstretched for balance. When you steady him, his wrist fits completely within your thumb and forefinger. His skin feels papery, like the fragile scroll edges in the synagogue. The disciples continue their planning. Philip calculates travel distances to nearby towns. Andrew suggests smaller groups might move faster. Their voices blend into a hum of logistics, while you remain fixed on the child before you. His mother approaches with hesitant steps. When she lifts him, his head lolls against her shoulder like a heavy blossom on a thin stem. Her own face shows the strain, cheekbones sharp beneath stretched skin, the tendons in her neck standing out like cords. You've seen hunger's progression before, the way it hollows cheeks first, then limbs, then vitality. In Nazareth, you helped neighbours through lean years when crops failed. But this is different. Not isolated hardship, but a sea of need stretching farther than the lake's horizon. The disciples fall silent when you turn toward them. Their faces show confusion at your stillness. They expect action, organization, delegation, solutions. But something deeper moves within you now, settling like water finding its level. The child's sunken eyes blink up at you once more. His mother shifts him higher on her hip, her arms trembling with the effort. The simple motion speaks volumes, love persisting even when the body weakens. An impulse rises in your chest, warmer than the setting sun on your back. You recognize this feeling from other moments when the leper called out by the road, when the paralyzed man's friends lowered him through the roof. A certainty that drowns out logical objections about scarcity or timing. The disciples edge closer, waiting for direction. You catch Bartholomew's eye and see him inhale sharply, as if sensing the shift. Behind him, the crowd murmurs nervously, mistaking your silence for hesitation. But you're not hesitating, you're remembering the manna in the wilderness. Elijah's widow with her bottomless jar of oil, all the times heaven has fed its people with impossible bounty. The recognition settles in your muscles like a long-held tension finally releasing. When you lift your hand, the crowd stills. Even the crying babies quiet as mothers hush them absently, their attention fixed on you. The afternoon breeze carries the scent of dry grass and the faintest hint of fish from the lake. Your fingers flex slightly, already anticipating the rough texture of barley loaves. The small offering you'll lift toward heaven, the miraculous that begins with a single step of obedience. One breath, two. Then you turn to Andrew with an instruction so simple it almost cracks your voice. Bring me what bread you have. The words hang in the air between you. Not a question, not a hope, but a door opening. Somewhere nearby, a child's stomach growls loudly. The sound should be comical, but it twists something inside you instead. The disciples exchange glances. They don't see what you see. Not yet, but their feet move anyway, shuffling through the grass in search of anything edible. And you stand very still, your palms tingling with the weight of what's to come. The hunger around you is vast. The resources seem laughably small. Yet beneath your feet, the earth feels solid. The sunlight continues its slow slide toward evening, and the miracle waits in the space between human impossibility and divine certainty. Andrew returns with a bundle wrapped in coarse cloth, his steps slow as if carrying something fragile. The fabric parts in his hands to reveal 5 small barley loaves, round, dense, their surfaces cracked from baking over hot stones. They feel warm still, having been pressed close to someone's body during the journey here. Your fingers trace their uneven edges. These are not the smooth, even loaves of wealthy households, but the uneven work of a poor family's oven. The underbaked spots give slightly under your touch, while the crustier sections scrape gently against your palm. 2 small fish lay nestled beside them, dried sardines, their scales still clinging in patches. The sea scent rises from them, salt and brine sharp against the dusty air of the hillside. One fish lacks a tail, already broken off perhaps by the boy who surrendered his meal. The other's eye stares up, clouded in death, but still gleaming in the late sun. You weigh them in your hand together, these thin, brittle things that a fishing family would normally stretch across multiple meals with careful rationing. The offering looks laughable now that it sits in your hands. 5 loaves the size of a child's fist, 2 fish smaller than your palm combined. The disciples shift on their feet around you, their silence thick with unspoken doubt. You can practically hear Thomas calculating maybe half a bite per 100 people if they tore the bread to crumbs. Philip exhales sharply through his nose, a puff of air that says everything. Nearby, a toddler whimpers, his hunger cutting through the stillness. Barley bread was peasant food, cheaper than wheat, but heavier, denser. These particular loaves bear marks of haste. Uneven thickness, flour dust still clinging to the bottoms. Someone baked them quickly, perhaps when words spread of your arrival. The fibres cling together stubbornly, resisting when you test their give. Unlike fine wheat bread that tears easily, barley needs real pressure to separate. Rough grains press into your skin as you hold them. The fish feel different, brittle, but still slightly pliable from whatever curing process preserved them. Their skin rasps against your fingertips, tiny ridges catching on calluses as you turn them slightly. The smell intensifies when they move, not the fresh tang of today's catch, but the deeper, aged musk of fish preserved for lean days. For a moment, you imagine the hands that prepared them, the quick scaling, the careful salting, the long wait as the tiny bodies dried in the sun. Now they would be eaten in minutes. Judas clears his throat. Even 200 denarii wouldn't. Andrew cuts in. The boy gave all he had. His voice holds something like apology as he looks at the meagre offering in your hands. You close your fingers around the loaves slightly. The pressure makes a few crumbs dislodge, scattering across your palm. Others have given more impressive gifts, the wealthy lowering baskets from upper rooms, merchants presenting whole lambs. But this is sacrifice. You recognize the truth in Andrew's words. Some mother likely pressed this into her son's hands this morning, her own stomach growling as she sent him out. The disciples have formed a loose half-circle around you, their postures telegraphing their thoughts. Peter crosses his arms, his biceps straining the fabric of his tunic. John keeps glancing toward the surrounding villages as if estimating how fast the crowd could reach them. Nathaniel has that look he gets when solving a difficult problem, brow furrowed, lips moving silently with calculations that don't add up. You let your thumb stroke the loaves again. The texture grounds you real and imperfect, like the people watching with hungry eyes. This isn't some temple offering of perfect shoe bread. It's food shaped by tired hands, given at personal cost. The boy lingers nearby, his stomach audibly protesting its emptiness, even as he surrenders his meal. Someone in the crowd whispers too loudly, "What are they doing with that?" A hint of breeze carries the words away, along with the scent of the fish. The smell reminds you of childhood summers, when dried fish was all the village had after pull harvests, how your mother would soak and flake it into gruel to stretch further. The memory tightens your grip slightly. James the Lesser edges forward. "Rabbi, perhaps if we..." You lift your hand, and he stills. The movement sends another small shower of crumbs drifting to the ground. A sparrow darts in, snatching one before flitting away. The disciples track its flight instinctively, a dozen heads turning in unison. When they look back, your stance has changed. The doubt in the air is palpable, a living thing pressing from all sides. The disciples' practical concerns, the crowd's growing restlessness. Even nature seems to hold its breath. No birdsong now, just the rustle of grass in the wind. Yet beneath it all runs a current of something else like the moment before. Lightning strikes when the air hums with potential. Your fingers tighten briefly around the bread once more. The coarse texture bites into your palms. Real, solid, undeniably insufficient. And yet, you raise your face toward heaven. The loaves and fish, held lightly now, no longer gripped, but offered. The sun's warmth spreads across your upturned cheeks. Somewhere behind you, Andrew inhales sharply. A miracle begins here, not when the bread multiplies, but the second your fingers loosen around impossibility. The disciples lean in despite themselves. The crowd stills. Even the wind pauses mid-breath, and in your hands, 5 small loaves and 2 fish grow heavy with promise. The late afternoon sun presses against your eyelids as you tilt your face upward. Its warmth spreads across your forehead, down the bridge of your nose, familiar as your father's workshop felt beneath your childhood fingertips. You don't close your eyes completely. The light paints shifting patterns of red and gold behind your lids. Somewhere above, a single bird cuts across the open sky, its shadow passing over you like a fleeting touch. Your arms lift naturally, the motion practiced through countless dawn prayers and midnight vigils. The loaves rest open, palmed in your left hand, the fish cradled in your right. This isn't the formal posture of temple priests with their precise angles and measured gestures. Your elbows bend slightly, relaxed, as if you're holding something fragile yet infinitely precious. The stance comes not from ritual, but relationship, the way a child reaches for a parent without thought. The dusty hem of your robe brushes the tops of your sandaled feet as you stand balanced between earth and sky. Around you, the crowd's murmuring dims like waves drawing back from shore. Individual voices melt into a soft hum, a woman shushing her child, sandals scraping against stone, the rustle of clothing as people shift position. The disciples edge closer unconsciously, their breathing now the nearest sound. John's exhale ghosts across your shoulder, warm and uneven. You can almost hear Peter's teeth grinding, in that way he does when suppressing questions, but these human sounds feel distant compared to the steady rhythm of your own pulse in your ears. Scholars would later debate what prayer you spoke in this moment. They'll analyze possible Aramaic phrases, reconstruct liturgical formulas. But no words form on your tongue now. Your throat stays still, your lips barely parted. A prayer happens somewhere deeper in the surrender of your shoulder muscles as they loosen their tension, in the way your fingers relax around the meager offering. Your chest expands, with a breath that feels like the first one you've taken all day. The scent of barley and dried fish mixes with the mineral tang of sweat evaporating from your skin. Tradition says devout Jews prayed with hands lifted toward heaven, palms upward to receive blessing. You've seen the elderly in Nazareth do this, their knobby knuckles trembling with the effort. Now your own palms cup empty air, yet they suddenly feel full. The weight of the 5 loaves hasn't changed, but something in your grip has. The rough texture of the bread's crust registers differently now, not as poverty's mark, but as promise. Those irregular cracks where the baker's fingers press too hard. They catch the sunlight, like tiny channels waiting to be filled. A bead of sweat traces the line of your spine beneath your tunic. The physical sensations anchor you, the pleasant ache in your neck from holding this posture, the breeze cooling your damp temples, the pressure of the disciples' gaze against your profile. Prayer isn't an escape from these things, but their transformation. Even the fish's briny scent becomes sacramental as it mixes with the dusty aroma of the crowd around you. The sunlight intensifies for a heartbeat, or perhaps your pupils simply dilate. Your raised hands block part of the glare, throwing shadows across your face. When you were 12 and debating the rabbis in Jerusalem, the temple's marble floors burned your bare feet at midday. Now that same noonday intensity flares again, but muted, filtered through your fingers, through the barley loaves, through the layers of human need surrounding you. A warmth spreads down your arms, as if you're absorbing the light itself. Some prayers happen in groans, too deep for words. This one vibrates through your sternum without sound, a resonance felt rather than heard. You fasted for 40 days before, felt your body burn through its reserves until grace became your only sustenance. Now, as then, an odd strength thrums through tired muscles. The loaves in your hand feel simultaneously lighter and more substantial, like holding both seed and harvest at once. A child sneezes in the crowd. The ordinary sound should shatter the moment, but instead it grounds you further. This miracle isn't happening on some sacred mountaintop, but here among runny noses and aching feet, with someone's baby crying and a fisherman's stomach growling nearby. The disciples shuffle again. You sense Andrew wiping sweaty palms on his tunic, smell the faint rosemary scent of someone's recently washed hair. All of it, the holy and the human, presses in until the boundaries blur. Your fingers twitch, not from fatigue but awareness. The fish's scales prickle against your skin differently now, their ridges more pronounced. The bread's weight shifts in ways that defy physics, not increasing yet, but thrumming with potential, like a plucked harp string vibrating just beyond hearing. The sensation travels up your arms, spreads across your shoulders. When you inhale next, the air tastes charged, almost metallic, like the moment before a desert rain. Your fingertips press into the barley loaf's rough surface. At first it resists stubbornly, the dense bread formed from coarse flour and minimal leavening. You apply more pressure, feeling the crust's uneven texture bite into your skin. Then suddenly, with a quiet crackle that echoes sharply in the hushed air, the crust fractures. The sound is distinct, not the soft tear of fresh wheat bread, but the sharpest snap of dry barley giving way. A puff of flour rises where the break occurs, catching the sunlight as it drifts downward. The sudden release sends vibrations through your palm, that momentary resistance before yielding, making the act feel more significant than simple bread breaking. As the loaf separates, warmth escapes from its interior. The aroma hits you first, earthy and nutty, but somehow richer than barley normally smells. It carries notes you hadn't noticed before, the honeyed sweetness of good grain, the smokiness of the clay oven where it was baked. The scent spreads rapidly, cutting through the background, odors of dust and sweat. Heads turn toward you as people inhale reflexively, their stomachs responding before their minds comprehend. The texture changes as you examine the torn edge. Where before the bread seemed dry and meager, now the exposed interior glistens slightly, not with added oils, but with its own inherent moisture suddenly more apparent. Steam rises in thin curls despite the loaf having cooled during the journey here. Your thumb brushes the soft crumb, finding it springy beneath your touch rather than crumbling. Andrew edges closer without meaning to, his shoulder bumping yours as he leans in. His quick inhale is audible. Behind him, James makes a small, questioning sound in his throat. You don't look up at them yet, focused instead on the way the torn section stretches slightly before breaking free, entirely elastic in a way barley bread shouldn't be. A few stray crumbs tumble onto your wrist, but surprisingly few for how firmly the loaf had held together moments before. The fish comes next. Your other hand snaps off a portion almost without thought. Where the dried sardine should fracture jaggedly, it instead peels apart along clean lines as if the curing process has reversed itself somehow. The flesh beneath looks firmer than before, its fibres visible but moist now. A drop of liquid beads where you've separated it, catching the light before soaking back into the meat. Someone in the front row of the crowd gasps. You finally glance up to see faces frozen in various stages of disbelief, mouths slightly open, brows furrowed, heads tilting as if trying to resolve a visual puzzle. The boy who donated the food stands on tiptoe, his earlier exhaustion forgotten as he strains to see. His mother clutches his shoulder with one hand while covering her mouth with the other. The disciples form a tighter circle around you now. Peter's calloused fingers twitch at his sides, perhaps remembering all the times he's broken bread during meagre fishing trips. John's expressive eyes dart between your hands, and the crowd, calculating logistics that no longer apply. Philip, ever practical, actually reaches out halfway before stopping himself, his palm hovering in midair as if testing the reality of what he's seeing. You tear another piece from the loaf. This time, a larger section comes away with that same slight resistance followed by sudden release. More steam escapes, carrying that inexplicably rich aroma further. A bread feels heavier in your hand now, not denser exactly, but more substantial, as if each torn portion somehow contains more than its volume should allow. A curious phenomenon occurs when you pass the first portion to Andrew. He accepts it automatically, his fingers closing around the warm bread before his mind catches up with the action. As the transfer happens, you both feel it, that fleeting moment when the morsel seems to multiply between your hands. Not visibly, but tangibly, the weight remaining constant, though more bread exists suddenly. Andrew's eyes widen comically as he examines his palm. The piece he holds now appears slightly larger than what you handed him, not dramatically so, but noticeably. His head snaps up, but you're already tearing another section, then another, the rhythm becoming fluid as the initial hesitation fades. The sounds build around you, the continued crackle of crust, the soft gasp from Bartholomew as he received his portion, the awed murmur sweeping through the crowd like wind through dry grasses. Matthew, ever observant, reaches to touch the original loaf still in your hand, as if verifying its size hasn't diminished despite multiple pieces being removed. The fish exhibit the same inexplicable quality. Each time you break off the portion, the remaining piece seems unchanged, not magically replenished all at once, but declining so slowly as to defy observation. The drying process appears reversed in real time, the flesh softening, the scales laying flatter, even the briny scent intensifying as if the sea had reclaimed its gift momentarily. A child's giggle bubbles up from somewhere in the crowd, that pure sound of delight when ordinary rules no longer apply. The disciples exchange glances, ranging from amazement to nervous laughter. Someone, maybe Thomas, mutters under his breath, what they're all thinking as the impossible becomes tangible in their hands, in their sight, in the very air thick with the scent of a meal, multiplying moment by moment. The miracle isn't flashy. No thunder sounds, no divine light flashes across the hillside. But in the quiet tearing of bread, in the way flesh yields unexpectedly under fingers, in the growing piles of food passed from hand to hand, something holy unfolds with each ordinary yet extraordinary motion. Your fingers never hurry as they continue dividing the loaves. The methodical rhythm becomes almost meditative press. Resist, break, pass. The disciples mirror your movements now, each tear releasing that same rich aroma, each transfer seeming to multiply the bounty fractionally. The crowd's initial silence gives way to murmurs of wonder that rise and fall like waves on the nearby lake. And still, in your palm, 5 small barley loaves remain diminished, yet somehow undiminished, their rough surfaces now glistening with possibility. The first skeptical whispers about insufficient quantities fade as baskets begin circulating through the crowd. What began as impossibility becomes inevitable moment by moment, piece by broken piece. A miracle grows, not in grand gestures, but in countless small tears, each crust's crackle a proclamation, each shared portion a revelation. Heaven touches earth through something as ordinary as bread breaking, hunger meeting abundance, one torn piece at a time. Your palms tingle first, that faint prickling sensation when circulation returns after holding something too tightly. Yet nothing restricts your hands now. The barley loaves shift subtly against your skin, their weight fluctuating in strange waves. One moment they feel light, as husks ready to blow away. The next, they press down with satisfying heft that should strain your wrists, but doesn't. The disciples' baskets lie empty at their feet, woven reeds gaping upward like baby birds waiting to be fed. You break off another piece of bread. This time, when you place it in Andrew's basket, something remarkable happens. The single morsel seems to duplicate upon contact. Not dramatically, but distinctly enough that Nathaniel, leaning closest, jerks back slightly. The bread now occupies more space than physics should allow, edges nudging against the basket's sides as if reluctant to be contained. Fish present the more startling transformation. Where dried sardines should crumble, their flesh now glistens with moisture resurrected from memory. Their scales that had lain dull moments before catch the angled sunlight, throwing back tiny spears of silver. Each time you add another portion to the growing pile, the remaining fish in your hand appears unchanged, diminishing impossibly slowly as if replenished by some unseen hand. Peter reaches out to touch the multiplying food, his coarse fingertips hovering just above the basket's edge. His calloused hands, accustomed to counting catch after long nights fishing, fail to comprehend what they witness. The arithmetic he knows fish tallied, wages calculated, mouths to feed, disintegrates before this new math, where subtraction somehow creates increase. The process accelerates as more disciples join the distribution, baskets pass from hand to hand, their weight increasing steadily despite constant removal of portions. At one point, John stumbles slightly under the unexpected heft of his basket, not from strain, but sheer surprise at the density suddenly contained within ordinary reeds. Physics behaves differently around these baskets. Steam rises from bread that should have cooled. Fish oil coats fingers, yet never makes the wicker slippery. The scent of barley intensifies as more loaves divide, filling the air with a richness unattainable from mere 5 loaves. Even the sounds change. The rustle of multiplying bread develops a strange rhythm, like grain pouring into a never-filling barn. Your arms should ache by now. You've been standing for hours, lifting and dividing without pause, yet strength flows through you in counterpoint to your earlier exhaustion, not eliminating fatigue, but coexisting with it curiously. The paradox settles in your muscles, weariness from the long day still present, yet overlaid by something indefinable that prevents collapse. It feels similar to those moments in prayer, when time distorts minutes stretching like warmed honey, even as the body remains bound by its limits. The disciples adapt quickly despite their shock. Philip stops calculating and starts distributing, his practical mind redirecting toward action. Thomas abandons skepticism to help James gather suddenly overflowing baskets. Even Judas moves efficiently, his usual calculating expression replaced by focused wonder as he sections fish with uncharacteristic generosity. Children press forward, drawn by the growing commotion. A little girl with tangled hair accepts a piece of bread directly from your hand. Her fingers, sticky with juice from some earlier foraged fruit, close around the offering, and for a fleeting instant you swear the morsel expands slightly in her grip. She doesn't notice, already turning to share with her younger brother, but the impression lingers. This miracle isn't confined to your hands alone. Incredibly, the crowd's noise diminishes as satisfaction spreads. Contented chewing replaces desperate pleading. Laughter bubbles up where worried murmurs dominated moments before. Faces lose their tight, hungry expressions as shoulders relax beneath patched tunics. The transformation isn't instantaneous, but spreads through the masses like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, first near the front where baskets circulate most freely, then gradually outward to the fringes where stragglers still doubt. Benjamin, the old blind man who comes to hear you teach whenever you're near Bethsaida, cradles his portion carefully. His milky eyes see nothing, but his fingertips trace the bread's surface reverently. This has the feel of manna, he murmurs to no one in particular, his voice carrying in the lull. The comparison drifts through those nearby, heads nodding as they recall the stories bred from heaven sustaining their ancestors in another wilderness long ago. At some point, the disciples stop keeping track of which baskets they filled. The attempts to ration, to control, to plan all dissolve into joyful distribution. Bread passes hand to hand until the chain stretches so far you can't see its end. Fish circulate until no one remembers who received first. Yet through it all, the original 5 loaves remain in your grasp, diminished, yet undiminished, their rough edges now smoothed by countless tearings. The 2 fish have long since surpassed their original size and state, yet their essence persists in every shared portion. The miracle isn't showy. No angels announce it, no lightning splits the sky. It happens quietly, persistently, one torn piece of bread at a time, one shared fish after another. Heaven intersects earth not with fanfare, but through something as ordinary as hungry people being fed. And somehow, impossibly, there's always enough. I hope you're enjoying this peaceful journey so far. I'm now going to hand you over to a good friend of mine to continue our story.
You extend the first portion toward Andrew. His hands, still calloused from last night's fishing nets, tremble slightly as he accepts the bread. The contrast strikes you, his rough palms against the soft warmth of the miraculous loaf. His eyebrows lift when the morsel seems to settle heavier in his grip than it should. For a moment he simply stares, his lips moving without sound as his practical mind wars with what his senses report. Then his shoulders relax all at once, the tension draining from his frame as he exhales a quiet, surrendering breath. Peter's reaction unfolds differently. When his turn comes, he grabs the bread with characteristic boldness, then freezes mid-motion as the texture registers. His fingers press experimentally, testing the loaf's strange resilience. A chuckle escapes him, equal parts wonder and bewildered joy. "Master," he murmurs, shaking his head as if giving up on understanding. His thick fisherman's fingers tear the bread clumsily at first, then with growing confidence as passing pieces to others makes his own portion multiply. John accepts his share wordlessly, but his fingers linger against yours a heartbeat longer than necessary. His expressive eyes shine as he studies the bread, then you, then back to the bread again. Where others react outwardly, John absorbs the miracle quietly, his sharp mind undoubtedly filing away details for stories he'll tell decades later. His gentle handling of each piece suggests he's already recognized this moment's sacred weight. Judas receives his basket last, his forearm muscles tensing as he gauges its unexpected heft. His accountant's mind can't resist silently calculating the implications. How much capital could be leveraged from such provision? How efficiently the system might be replicated? But even his pragmatic nature succumbs momentarily to awe when the bread replenishes itself before his eyes. He squints at a fragment in his palm like it's a puzzling ledger entry before shaking himself and passing it along. Matthew stands slightly apart at first, observing with his usual quiet intensity. When you nod toward him, his scribe's fingers, more accustomed to stylus than manual labor, reach out with surprising tenderness. The bread nearly slips from his grasp when it twitches slightly, as if alive beneath his touch. His quiet draws smiles from the others as he adjusts his grip with newfound reverence. The disciples' initial hesitation melts as the process continues. Soon they form an efficient chain, each receiving, dividing, passing with growing confidence. Bartholomew proves surprisingly adept at tearing perfect portions, his farmer's hands moving methodically. James and Andrew develop a rhythm trading baskets, their earlier exhaustion forgotten in the shared purpose. Even Thomas, who hesitated longest, now distributes food with quiet fervor, occasionally pausing to scrutinize a piece before shaking his head and continuing. Their differences show in how they handle the miracle. Philip keeps testing reality, pinching himself, examining crumbs, murmuring measurements under his breath. Nathaniel simply accepts with childlike delight, his laughter ringing out when a fish slides unexpectedly between his fingers. Simon the Zealot gazes at the crowd with something like triumph, as if seeing the revolution's first provisions being distributed. You watch them adapt, these friends who still barely comprehend their calling. Their hands, so varied in skill and history, now unite in this simplest yet most profound task, passing nourishment from your touch to countless hungry palms. Callous brush against smooth skin, paint-stained fingers bump against fishermen's knots. Young hands and old all sharing the same astonished joy. James the Lesser hesitates longest to participate. His naturally timid nature makes him linger at the group's edge until you catch his eye. When he finally accepts a basket, his nervous energy gives way to quiet concentration. His careful, deliberate distributions soon establish one of the most orderly serving lines, proving his overlooked gifts for organization. The transfer becomes a dance of sorts, each disciple adding their unique motions to the pattern. Peter's bold gestures, John's fluid movements, Matthew's precise tearings all combine into something harmonious despite their differences. Their shared glances and wordless exchanges suggest a silent language developing among them, one that will grow through many more miracles and meals to come. Each time a disciple's basket runs low, they return to you automatically, their faith now outweighing their doubt. The refills happen seamlessly, You add one piece, they blink, and suddenly their basket holds plenty again. Philip wants to count how many times his basket replenishes, but gives up laughing when the numbers stop making sense. The crowd responds in kind, their initial shock softening into grateful acceptance. Children giggle when bread appears in their hands before the disciples even reach them. Elders nod sagely, recognizing echoes of ancient stories. Young parents weep quietly as they press first bites into their toddlers' mouths. The disciples' own faces reflect this transformation. Where confusion once reigned, quiet understanding now grows. The most profound change occurs in their hands themselves. Where first they trembled and questioned, now they work steadily. The same hands that will later heal, baptize, and break bread in remembrance. This first shared miracle imprints itself not just in their minds but in their muscles, teaching their fingers the feel of divine provision so they'll recognize it again. You catch the moment when the truth settles over them collectively. A glance passes between Peter and Andrew, then James and John. Some silent realization that this isn't just about full stomachs but about their life's changing shape. The way they now stand taller while serving suggests they grasp their new role. Not just witnesses but participants in heaven's work. Evening light gilds their faces as they move among the crowd. Sweat glistens on brows from the effort, yet no one complains. The weariness from earlier seems forgotten in the joy of seeing despair turn to satisfaction. When their paths cross, they exchange wordless nods, affirmations that bond them more deeply than any sermon could. Occasionally one will pause, staring at their hands as if seeing them anew. These fingers, once just tools for fishing nets and tax collecting, now channel inexplicable abundance. The callus and scars remain, but their purpose has expanded beyond mere survival. The disciples don't yet understand all that's happening, but their obedience in this moment, tearing, passing, sharing without fully comprehending, prepares them for the greater mysteries ahead. This miracle isn't just about feeding thousands. It's the first lesson in their calling to become feeders themselves. When at last the crowd murmurs contentedly and children curl sleepily against full stomachs, the disciples gather near you once more. Their baskets, impossibly, still hold fragments. Tangible reminders that what begins small in God's hands never truly runs out. Their eyes meet yours, no longer questioning how but simply grateful that it is. The shared purpose lingers in their posture as they watch the sunset paint the fed crowd's gold. Shoulders brush together companionably. Calloused hands remain open now, no longer clenched in doubt. This day's miracle has changed the bread, but it's changing the bearers too, one torn piece at a time. The baskets move through the crowd in a steady rhythm, passing from hand to hand like waves lapping a shoreline. You stand on the slight incline overlooking the scene, watching as clusters of villagers lean in together when food reaches their section. At first their movements are hesitant, hands outstretched but not quite believing until the bread's weight proves real. Then comes that moment when each person realizes this is no illusion, their faces transforming right before your eyes. Little gasps circle outward from each distribution point, gathering volume as surprise spreads through the masses like ripples in a pond. Children react first. Their natural acceptance bypasses adult skepticism, so they simply take the offered food with delighted giggles. A boy near the front sinks his teeth eagerly into his portion, then tugs his younger sister's sleeve to show her the wonder in his palm. Her eyes widen when she pinches off a piece and finds it somehow replaced immediately. Their laughter attracts others nearby, neighbors leaning over shoulders to see what's causing such joy in these usually solemn siblings. The phenomenon repeats wherever disciples distribute, initial disbelief giving way to tentative nibbles, then to wholehearted feasting. Elders respond differently. Their gnarled fingers examine each portion carefully before tasting, lifetimes of hardship making them cautious of unexpected bounty. One gray-bearded man sniffs his bread deeply, the scent triggering memories his murmurs reveal, stories his own grandfather told about manna in the wilderness. He shares this recollection with those around him, and soon others nod along, recognizing echoes of ancient promises being renewed before them. The wisdom keepers grasp the significance faster than the younger generations, their lined faces softening with something akin to homecoming. Mothers form natural networks, redistributing portions to ensure every child eats. Their practiced hands break bread into equal shares, smoothing any uneven edges before passing it down the line. Food moves through their ranks differently than elsewhere, less excitement perhaps, but more ordered care. A breastfeeding woman cradles her infant with one arm while accepting a fish portion with the other, her tired eyes brightening when she tastes it. Nearby, a pregnant teenager hesitates before taking her share, glancing around guiltily until an older woman presses another piece into her palm with a knowing look. The quiet solidarity between these women speaks louder than the crowd's growing chatter. The fishermen in the crowd react with professional curiosity. They examine the fish portions with experts' eyes, noting the impossible freshness of what moments ago was dried provisions. Their calloused fingers probe the texture, stretch the flesh, even taste a raw sliver to test its quality. Wondering murmurs pass between them as they compare observations. This fish flakes perfectly, smells briny clean, bears no signs of spoilage despite sitting unrefrigerated. One grizzled old sailor laughs outright when his portion seems to replenish before his eyes, slapping his neighbor's back as if sharing some cosmic joke. Teachers and scribes cluster together, their reactions more measured. They accept the food politely but spend equal time observing the crowd's transformation. Parchments appear from satchels as they hastily note descriptions, the way light plays across satisfied faces, the exact timbre of the gathering's growing contentment. Some debate quietly among themselves, citing scripture passages about divine provision while gesturing toward the multiplying baskets. Their intellectual curiosity balances the village's simpler acceptance, creating a harmony of different responses to the same miracle. The disciples weave through this mosaic tirelessly, their initial uncertainty having melted into steady purpose. You watch as Peter pauses to lift a stumbling toddler, casually handing the child a bread crust before moving on. Andrew kneels beside an elderly couple to help them divide their portion evenly. John shares a quiet word with some teenagers, his gentle manner putting them at ease. Each disciple finds their natural role in this impromptu feast. Peter's boldness drawing laughter, Thomas' carefulness ensuring fairness, Matthew's precision organizing distribution lines. Dusk paints everything golden as the meal continues. Long shadows stretch across the hillside, mingling with the aromas of barley and fish now permeating the air. The initial frantic energy has settled into something quieter but deeper, contented murmurs replacing desperate pleas, relaxed postures replacing tense anticipation. Full stomachs soften hard edges, shared abundance melts distance between strangers. Conversations sprout where silence ruled before, village gossip exchanged, farming tips shared, even tentative plans made for future visits now that bellies are full and hope renewed. From your vantage point, the scene resembles nothing so much as a vast family gathering, the kind held after harvest when all finally rest from labor. The same easy camaraderie, the same satisfied lulls between conversations, even similar sounds of children play fighting now that hunger no longer dominates their attention. What began as disparate groups, farmers clustered by village, fishermen grouped by boat crews, families keeping to themselves, has dissolved into one interconnected whole. The baskets still circulate, though slower now, portions taken more sparingly as appetites are satisfied. Disciples pause frequently to drink from waterskins, their robes darkened with sweat from hours of constant movement, yet their expressions strangely energized. You catch Philip's eye across the crowd. He holds up a basket still 1/3 full and shakes his head in smiling bewilderment before continuing his rounds. Nearby, Bartholomew examines a leftover fish portion that seems to have grown back partially despite being nibbled at all edges. As shadows lengthen, the crowd's noise diminishes further, replaced by the natural sounds of evening. Crickets beginning their chorus, birds returning to roost, the lake's gentle lapping against the shore. Full-bellied infants doze in their mother's arms while elders recline against each other's shoulders. Even the most energetic teenagers have settled into contented circles, passing scraps back and forth idly more from habit than need. The entire hillside seems to exhale together, tension draining away like water soaking into thirsty ground. You inhale the cooling air, tasting dust and grass and satisfied humanity. The stones beneath your feet still radiate warmth from the day's heat, a quiet reminder of time passing even as this moment feels suspended outside it. The disciples begin making their way back toward you, their steps unhurried now, faces relaxed in ways you haven't seen since before John's death. Their baskets still hold fragments despite having fed thousands, tangible evidence that divine mathematics defies all human calculation. Night's first stars appear as the last distribution lines finish. The disciples' return is punctuated by yawns and satisfied sighs, their earlier exhaustion now mingled with peaceful fulfillment. They exchange glances that need no words, all understanding they've participated in something that will linger in their bones long after the meal's memory fades. Their hands, once doubtful, now move with quiet assurance, gathering the remaining fragments automatically as if already anticipating the next time they'll be called to feed hungry souls. The crowd doesn't disperse so much as melt away gradually, family by family, village by village, until only scattered groups remain. Twilight softens their departing figures, blending them into the landscape until the hillside appears nearly empty again. But the air still hums with the miracle's afterglow, lingering like perfume after the source has gone. Even the grass underfoot seems changed, not just trodden by many feet but somehow hallowed by what unfolded upon it. The murmurs of hunger fade into a different kind of sound now, the quiet crunch of bread crusts giving way between teeth, the soft smack of lips savoring each bite. Where anxious voices filled the air earlier, now contented chewing creates a rhythmic background noise. Barley bread cracks differently than wheat, a drier, earthier sound that carries farther on the evening breeze. Children rediscover their voices first. High-pitched laughter bubbles up from where they sit in clusters, their earlier lethargy replaced by playful energy. A toddler giggles as his older brother sneakily shares an extra fish portion. Nearby, girls plait grass stems while nibbling their bread, their sandals kicking up little puffs of dust in time with some silent game. The sounds of childhood return, feet scampering, makeshift toys clattering, the occasional squabble over who got the bigger piece. Mealtimes in Galilee had their own distinct soundscape. Archaeologists note that ancient dining areas reveal worn spots where people likely gathered to eat. The smooth depressions of communal grinding stones, the charred remains of cooking fires. Tonight those familiar sounds layer together, bread tearing, fish bones snapping, occasional satisfied sighs. The textures create their own music, the gritty crunch of well-baked crust giving way to softer interiors, the moist tear of fish flesh separating from bone. Groups of men relax into conversation now that the edge is off their hunger. Their voices rumble lower than before, less strained. They discuss crops and weather mostly, safe topics that don't require much thought. The cadence is familiar, long pauses between exchanges, chewing noises filling the silence, an easy back and forth freed from earlier desperation. Sometimes a quiet chuckle breaks through when someone makes a dry observation about village life. Women converse differently, shorter phrases punctuated by nods, their hands still busy dividing portions for children and elderly. They make small sounds of approval as they eat, millimeter and are rising periodically. Occasionally one clicks her tongue when a child grabs greedily, followed by gentle reminders about gratitude. The older women eat more slowly, their chewing measured, occasionally pausing to press a hand against full bellies in quiet wonder. The disciples move through it all with growing confidence. Their footsteps make soft swishes through the grass as they circulate with baskets. Now and then you catch snippets of their hushed conversations, Peter marveling at how his basket never empties, Thomas examining fish bones with scientific curiosity, Andrew laughing quietly at James' attempt to count how many he's served. Their sandals scrape against stones as they pause to adjust loads or accept thanks from satisfied eaters. Full stomachs change how people sound. The crowd's earlier sharp cries for attention mellow into relaxed murmurs. Bodies shift positions comfortably, rustling robes, the occasional groan of pleasure after a particularly satisfying bite. Hunger's tension has melted away, leaving loose-limbed ease in its place. Even breathing patterns change, no longer the shallow inhales of stressed bodies but deep, contented sighs that fill the belly completely. Certain sounds stand out in the gathering dark. The snap of a fish spine as someone picks it clean. The dry crackle as a crust breaks between strong teeth. A waterskin's gurgle as it's passed around. These small noises layer together into something peaceful, not silence exactly, but the absence of need's clamor. Occasionally someone belches, sparking laughter instead of rebuke. The sound seems to permission others, Soon little eruptions dot the hillside, each met with good-natured chuckles. Even this bodily noise becomes part of the evening's harmony, proof of meals properly enjoyed. The disciples begin collecting remnants now, their sandals shuffling through trampled grass. Basket reeds creak as they're lifted, the sound different than before, weightier somehow, though they hold only fragments. The disciples' footsteps make soft thuds against the earth, their pace unhurried compared to earlier urgency. Twilight amplifies certain sounds, the chirp of waking crickets underneath the human noises, the distant cry of a night bird over the lake. As torches are lit here and there, their flames add a subtle hiss to the soundscape. The day's heat leaves the stones beneath you, their cooling cracks barely audible under the crowd's murmur. Children grow sleepy full, their voices softening into yawns. Parents shush them gently, the sounds affectionate now rather than desperate. A baby fusses briefly before settling against its mother's shoulder with a contented sigh. Nearby, an old man hums a familiar tune, the melody meandering like a well-worn path. The disciples regroup near you, their quiet conversations overlapping. Andrew describes a family's reaction. Peter mimics someone's astonished expression. John simply smiles, his fingers tracing a basket's edge absently. Their voices blend together, excited whispers that don't disturb the peace but add to it somehow. Eventually, even these noises dwindle. The crowd disperses slowly, their footsteps fading into the distance. Only the night sounds remain, grass rustling, the lake lapping, the occasional contented sigh from someone savoring the memory of full stomachs. The disciples settle into silence too, their breathing deep and even as they gaze at the star-strewn sky. Your own hands feel empty now, yet strangely full. The miracle's echoes linger in your palms, not just the memory of multiplied loaves, but the living symphony of gratitude that followed. The satisfied sounds of thousands fed still hum in the air like music after the musicians have set down their instruments. In the quiet that follows, the crunch of a disciple biting into one last crust seems to sum it all up. The ordinary made extraordinary, human need met with divine abundance. The sound carries farther than it should in the evening air before fading into the blessed stillness of contentment. The setting sun angles across the hillside, revealing what the meal left behind. Scattered fragments glint in the fading light, crumbs of barley bread tucked between tufts of grass, stray fish scales catching the last gold rays. At first glance they appear insignificant, these tiny remnants of a feast. Yet the disciples move carefully as they gather them, their fingers probing the trampled vegetation with unexpected reverence. 12 baskets sit waiting, ordinary woven containers borrowed from local villagers hours earlier. Now they're being returned with interest, each slowly filling with these recovered leftovers. The collection process becomes its own quiet ritual. Andrew kneels to pluck a nearly intact crust from beneath a stone. James carefully shakes grass blades free from a fishtail's delicate bones. John examines each recovered morsel before placing it in his basket, as if confirming its authenticity. Ancient meal customs valued leftovers differently than we do today. In a world without refrigeration, preserving extra food showed wisdom, whether drying meat for travel or storing grain against famine. Gathering fragments after communal meals was common practice, especially among the poor who couldn't afford waste. Yet tonight's collection feels different. These aren't just practical scraps saved for tomorrow, but tangible evidence of something inexplicable. The disciples handle each piece with quiet awe, their usual banter absent as they work. The baskets fill steadily despite the gathering dusk. One would expect leftovers to be meager after feeding thousands, yet 12 substantial collections take shape. Peter's basket overflows first, crusts jutting at odd angles above the rim. Thomas fills more slowly but just as completely, his methodical nature ensuring no crumb escapes notice. Even Judas, who usually dismisses such menial tasks, gathers his share diligently, his brow furrowed in concentration as he spots fragments others miss. Children help where they can, their small fingers adept at finding treasures in the grass. A boy delivers a palmful of crumbs to Bartholomew with solemn ceremony. Nearby, a girl chases a rolling crust that escapes her grasp, finally trapping it triumphantly beneath her sandal. Their youthful enthusiasm softens the disciples' focused expressions, drawing occasional smiles as they continue the patient work. The texture of the remnants fascinates. Expected dryness from hours exposed to air hasn't materialized. The bread remains slightly springy when pressed, the fish fragments still faintly moist. Matthew examines one piece curiously, rolling it between his fingers before sniffing it cautiously. Whatever preservation defies nature leaves no unusual scent, just the same wholesome aroma of freshly baked barley and properly cured fish. Quantity defies logic most of all. However carefully the disciples gather, there's always more to find. Another glint of crust in the grass, one more scale beneath a sandal's imprint. The process feels reminiscent of the miracle itself. The more they collect, the more remains awaiting discovery. Philip keeps glancing around in bewilderment, muttering calculations that never add up correctly. Elders among the crowd observe the collection with knowing eyes. One white-bearded man nods slowly as he watches Andrew's basket fill, his lips moving in silent prayer. Two women whisper together, occasionally pointing out overlooked fragments to the passing disciples. Their attitudes suggest they recognize the deeper meaning in this cleanup, that gathering 12 baskets full carries echoes of tribal unity from their ancestors' stories. As twilight deepens, the true paradox emerges. After unprecedented abundance comes careful stewardship. The disciples who earlier distributed food freely now become meticulous conservators, ensuring nothing perishable remains to rot in the field. Their dual role reflects the day's larger lesson. Divine generosity never negates human responsibility. The miracle fed mouths, but these collected fragments will feed memories and strengthen faith long after hunger returns. Torches flicker to life around the hillside, their uneven light creating shifting pools of illumination where the search continues. Shadows complicate the task. Crumbs hide in darkness until a slanting beam reveals them unexpectedly. The disciples adapt quickly, developing systems to cover ground efficiently despite fading visibility. Peter and John work side by side, their combined torchlight widening the search area. James and Thomas move in careful grids, ensuring no section gets overlooked. The 12th basket fills last. Bartholomew adds the final fragments just as full dark settles over the lake. He hesitates before lifting it, testing its unexpected heft. The woven reed strains slightly at the load, not just the physical weight of bread and fish, but the invisible burden of carrying proof. Tomorrow these leftovers will sustain their own group as they travel, each bite tasting of mystery. The gathered crowd has mostly dispersed now, their satisfied murmurs fading into the night. Only a few stragglers remain, watching the disciples complete their task. One lingering boy reaches timidly toward a basket, then pulls back when Nathaniel smiles at him. The unspoken question hangs in the air. What happens now that the miracle is over? You watch as the disciples hoist the 12 baskets, their faces illuminated unevenly by torchlight. Fatigue lines remain from the long day, but something new underlies it. A quiet confidence that wasn't there this morning. They exchange glances that communicate without words, their shared experience binding them tighter than any formal teaching could. The walk back to the shore feels different with full baskets swinging gently. Each step carries proof that scarcity and abundance can coexist in God's economy. That 5 loaves and 2 fish can feed thousands and still leave 12 baskets full. The disciples' footfalls sound heavier now, not from weariness but from the weight of what they carry, both in their hands and in their hearts. Moonrise silver the lake when you pause to look back. The hillside appears empty again, all traces of the feast cleared away except for slight depressions in the grass where crowds once sat today. Yet the miracle lingers, in the basket's satisfying weight, in the disciples' thoughtful expressions, in the quiet that speaks louder than any fanfare could. Tomorrow's journey will begin with full provisions and fuller understanding. The last torches gutter in the night breeze as your group reaches the shoreline. Water laps gently against the boat hulls, a soothing counterpoint to the disciples' quiet murmurs as they stow the baskets carefully. Their hands, once unsure around the first meager offering, now move with practiced ease, settling the leftovers securely for tomorrow's needs, trusting without seeing that what began today won't truly end when darkness falls. The crowd moves differently now. Where before they shuffled with the heavy steps of the hungry, now their feet lift lighter. Shoulders that slumped under the weight of need sit squared and relaxed. Children who clung lethargically to their parents' robes now dart between groups, their laughter weaving through the growing twilight. Faces tell the full story. Eyes that were dull with exhaustion now gleam, not just from reflected torchlight, but from inner nourishment. Cheeks that hung hollow now curve slightly as people smile at neighbors they barely acknowledged earlier. The transformation affects all ages. Elders sit taller on the rocks. Mothers cradle satisfied babies with renewed strength. Teens whisper excitedly together between bites. Science confirms what you see. A body deprived of food enters conservation mode. Muscles weaken, focus blurs, movements become effortful. When nourishment comes, the reversal happens quickly. Energy returns to limbs first, then clarity to the mind. You witness it unfolding across the hillside. The rigid posture of starvation giving way to natural ease, the agitation of hunger dissolving into calm. Conversations take on new life. Where earlier exchanges centered on pleading and complaint, now villagers discuss ordinary things. The upcoming wheat harvest, a daughter's betrothal, remedies for sore joints. The topics are mundane, but the tone carries fresh optimism. A fisherman demonstrates casting techniques with enthusiastic gestures. Two farmers debate irrigation methods good-naturedly. Simple pleasures re-emerge now that hunger's constant ache has lifted. Physical changes accompany the mental ones. Hands that trembled before now gesture confidently. Postures open as crossed arms unfold and bent spines straighten. Even voices sound different. Stronger, richer, no longer thin with strain. The collective murmur of contented people creates a low hum quite unlike the earlier tense silence punctuated by desperate appeals. Parents interact differently with their children too. Where earlier they could only offer empty reassurances, now they joke freely as they wipe crumbs from small faces. A father tousles his son's hair when the boy requests just one more piece. A mother actually joins her daughter's game, rolling a crust across the grass like a wheel. These tiny moments reveal the profound shift. Food hasn't just filled stomachs but restored dignity. Some elders weep quietly as they eat. For them, this meal triggers memories of other lean years, times when no miraculous provision came. Their gnarled fingers stroke the bread almost reverently before each bite, as if confirming its reality. One white-haired woman keeps whispering to herself between mouthfuls, her words too soft to hear but her awed expression clear even in fading light. Curious glances keep flickering your way. People don't approach directly. Something about the miracle leaves them respectfully distant, but their speculative murmurs carry on the evening breeze. Could he be the prophet? One man wonders aloud. No one but Elisha. Another responds before the thought trails off. The disciples hear it too. John keeps turning toward the whispers, his face unreadable. The miracle's timing adds to its power. Evening breezes cool sunburned skin. The lake's surface reflects the first evening stars, creating the illusion of a second sky below. In this liminal space between day and night, the full meaning of being fed sinks deeper than any full stomach could explain. People pause mid-bite to gaze at the darkening horizon as if seeing their world anew. Children experience it most purely. Unburdened by theology or expectations, they simply revel in being full. A little girl dances in small circles, her arms outstretched like bird wings. Two boys pretend the fish bones are swords, their play fighting drawing indulgent smiles from nearby adults. The energy of youth, so easily drained by hunger, now overflows safely in harmless mischief. Teenagers hover between childlike wonder and adult comprehension. They cluster in tight groups, chewing thoughtfully as they discuss what happened. Some seem eager to dismiss it, maybe the food was there all along, while others argue passionately for the unexplainable. Their darting glances at you suggest they're measuring everything they've been taught against today's impossible reality. The disciples move among this transformed crowd with quiet awe. Where earlier they distributed food mechanically, now they pause frequently, to marvel at a restored grandmother's vigor, to share a laugh with playing children, to accept quiet thanks from those too humble for loud proclamations. The basket-carrying tasks continue, but the urgency is gone, replaced by something more profound: partnership in renewing hope. Torches flare to life across the hillside as daylight fades. The flickering light reveals faces at peace, bodies relaxed, community reforged. What began in desperation ends in quiet joy, not raucous celebration, but the deep satisfaction of needs met beyond expectation. Even the departing groups moved differently now, not stumbling into darkness but walking purposefully homeward, their torch beams cutting confident paths through the night. The miracle's true measure isn't in baskets counted or mouths fed, but in bodies strengthened and spirits revived. Science can explain the biochemical reactions of a meal absorbed, but not how 5 loaves nourish thousands, nor why 12 baskets of fragments remain. The crowd's transformation testifies to both realities, the physical restoration undeniable, the divine origin inscrutable. As the last stragglers prepare to leave, one man lingers near you. His sun-weathered face could be 30 or 60, hard years having etched premature lines. He says nothing, merely meets your eyes briefly before touching his forehead, then his heart in the old way. The gesture speaks what words cannot, gratitude too deep for speech, or too vast for casual thanks. Then he turns toward his village, his steps firm on the darkening path. The disciples regroup, their own faces alight with something indefinable. Not just wonder at what they witnessed, but anticipation of what it means. They say little as they organize the remaining baskets, but their movements convey fresh certainty. The meal has ended, but the miracle continues, in strengthened limbs, renewed hope, and the unspoken promise that today changed more than hunger levels. Night settles fully now, the stars bright above the dispersing crowds. What began with 5 small barley loaves concludes with 12 brimming baskets, each fragment a reminder that with God, scarcity is merely the precursor to abundance. The people carry that truth home in their bodies and souls, their footsteps lighter not just from full stomachs but from glimpsing divine goodness made tangible. And you? You watch them go with quiet gratitude, not for their thanks or their praise, but for their transformations. Shoulders back, heads high, eyes bright. The change extends beyond the physical now, beyond even the miraculous, settling deep in the place where faith takes root and grows. Tomorrow's needs will return, but tonight, hope walks home on thousands of strengthened legs. The disciples cluster closer as the crowd disperses, their usual chatter replaced by thoughtful silence. Their fingers keep returning to the basket edges, tracing the woven reeds as if confirming these are the same containers that held 5 loaves hours earlier. Andrew picks at a leftover crust, peeling back layers slowly as though expecting to find some hidden explanation within. Questions come at first in hesitant bursts. Did you see? John begins, then trails off when Peter nods. The boy with the... Matthew tries, but stops mid-sentence. Their usual confident voices seem too loud somehow in the miracle's lingering glow. Instead, they communicate through glances, raised eyebrows when someone finds another crumb, meaningful stares when the crowd's muttered speculations drift their way. Peter breaks the quiet first. His blunt fisherman's fingers poke at the remaining fish fragments as he voices what they're all wondering. I counted at least 5,000 touches to this basket, he says. How is there still? His hand circles above the remaining scraps, the motion encompassing all 12 overflowing containers. Doubt and belief war in their expressions. Philip keeps counting on his fingers, his lips moving silently as he tallies people fed versus food available. Thomas examines a fish bone closely, holding it up to the fading light as if hoping it might reveal some secret. Nathaniel simply stares at his palms, the same hands that tore and distributed, now resting empty but somehow still full. Their understanding unfolds unevenly. For James and John, raised on their father Zebedee's stories of Elijah's miracles, recognition sparks first. Their eyes meet across the circle, some unspoken fisherman's understanding passing between them. Matthew the tax collector comes to it differently, his methodical mind working through the impossible math before surrendering to wonder. Simon the zealot seems conflicted, his revolutionary expectations bumping against this quieter, more nourishing messiahship. Judas stands slightly apart, his accountant's face unreadable. His fingers absently rub a silver coin hidden in his sash, the familiar weight perhaps grounding him as the others drift toward awe. Yet even his practical gaze keeps returning to the baskets, their contents defying every financial principle he knows. The questions grow bolder as night deepens. When Moses? Andrew ventures. But Alicia only. John counters. They speak in half-references, testing ideas against scripture they've known since childhood. The miracle fits the pattern of prophet stories, yet exceeds them too, not just multiplied oil or bread for one widow, but abundance for thousands from a boy's meager lunch. Moonlight reveals their changing expressions. Where earlier they watched the crowd's transformation, now they undergo their own. Peter's usual brashness softens into something more thoughtful. Thomas' skepticism gives way to cautious wonder. Even practical Philip stops calculating at some point, his hands stilling on his basket's rim as simple acceptance washes over him. The unspoken truth hovers between them. You see the moment it settles, when James exhales sharply and runs a hand through his hair, when John's ever-observant eyes suddenly glisten, when Andrew's hesitant smile finally breaks free. They don't say it aloud yet, maybe can't, but their postures shift subtly, their movements around you carrying new reverence. The 12 baskets become their touchstone. A disciple will pause mid-sentence to finger the woven edges again. Another absent-mindedly rearranges the leftover fragments, ensuring not one is wasted. The physical evidence anchors their spiraling thoughts, something tangible to grasp when facing the ineffable. They remember other moments suddenly, the wedding wine, the healed leper, the storm stilled with a word. Puzzle pieces click together behind their eyes as scattered experiences reorganize into a clearer picture. Conversations overlap now as connections form. Is this why? Peter gestures toward the empty hillside where thousands Saturday. When you said. John recalls some teaching suddenly relevant. Even Judas engages fully now, his analytical mind seeking patterns in the miracles. Their belief isn't perfect, wavering at times when exhaustion resurfaces. Thomas still picks suspiciously at a fish scale. Philip occasionally mutters numbers under his breath. But the foundation has shifted irreversibly beneath them, like sand giving way to stone. You see them realize it simultaneously, that they're not just following another rabbi. The understanding needs no words. It passes between them in shared breaths and widened eyes. Some react with nervous energy. James cracks his knuckles repeatedly. Peter scratches his beard roughly. Others grow still. John's breathing slows. Andrew's fingers cease fidgeting. The walk back to the boats happens wordlessly. Normally they jostle for position, debating who rows where. Tonight they move as one body, the 12 baskets carried carefully between them like sacred objects. Their footfalls sink naturally on the well-worn path. No stragglers, no rushed leaders, just 12 men processing something monumental together. At the shoreline, they pause. Water laps gently at the hulls, a rhythmic counterpoint to their thoughts. Someone, maybe Bartholomew, releases a long, shuddering breath that says more than paragraphs could. Peter turns abruptly as if to speak, then simply places a hand on your shoulder instead. The contact lingers, warm, solid, conveying what his words cannot. One by one, the others follow suit. Andrew's calloused palm comes to rest beside his brother's. John's touch is feather-light yet profound. Even Thomas eventually reaches out, his usual skepticism tempered by this tangible truth they've all grasped together. The moment stretches, no prayers, no declarations, just silent communion under star-strewn sky. Their linked presence speaks volumes. They don't fully understand yet, but they believe. The road ahead remains unclear, the teachings often mysterious, but after today, something irrevocable has changed. When they finally break apart to ready the boats, their movements carry new purpose. They load the baskets carefully, handle the sails gently, help each other aboard automatically. The familiar routines mask the interior transformations happening within each man. Peter steers while John trims the sail, their usual roles, but the silence between them is different now, charged with shared understanding. Andrew and Philip share a basket's weight without squabbling over balance. Small things, but revealing. As the boat pushes off, 12 pairs of hands work in unison while 12 minds replay the day's events. The crowd's jubilant murmurs may have faded, but the disciples carry forward something more lasting, not just full baskets, but awakened hearts beginning to grasp who walks among them. The crowds begin dispersing in small clusters now, moving more slowly with full stomachs. Your sandals brush through patches of trampled grass where families sat together. The air smells different, less of hunger and more of contentment. People nod as you pass, their faces relaxed in the torchlight. Some reach out hesitantly, not grasping desperately as before, but simply letting their fingertips brush your robe's edge. The touch lingers just momentarily, a silent thank you, before they continue on their way home. Earlier, hands grabbed at you with urgent need. Now the contact feels different, lighter, more reverent. An elderly woman presses her wrinkled palm briefly against your sleeve, her calluses catching on the fabric. A young couple bows slightly as you pass, their free hands briefly extended in the traditional sign of blessing. Children peek up at you through their lashes before shyly touching their own foreheads, then their hearts in the local gesture of deep gratitude. Ancient Galilean customs prized respectful physical acknowledgement. Farmers would clasp each other's forearms after sharing harvests. Households welcomed guests by briefly touching the mezuzah scroll on their doorframes before embracing. Tonight, these quiet touches speak volumes, not the frenzied grasps of the starving, but the deliberate, meaningful contacts of those who've been seen and fed. You notice how differently people move around you now. Before they pressed in urgently, now they create space, inviting you into their circles naturally. Fishermen pause their conversations to step aside as you pass, hands resting briefly over full stomachs. Parents guide children closer, not to beg but to quietly appreciate. Even the livestock seem calmer. Donkeys that earlier brayed impatiently now stand quietly as their owners prepare to leave. The most touching moments happen without words. A widower you once healed in Capernaum meets your eyes and places a hand over his heart, an old gesture meaning you've fed more than my body. Teenagers who earlier eyed you skeptically now bump each other's shoulders and look away, their respect too big for words. Little girls who cried from hunger hours ago now press wilting wildflowers into your palm before scampering off to their mothers. Torchlight flickers across grateful faces as you move through the thinning crowd. The same people who looked haunted by need now carry peace in their expressions. Their hands, once clenched in worry or extended in pleading, now rest easy at their sides or gesture gently as they talk. When they do reach out, it's with careful intention. Just fingertips to your elbow here, a quick squeeze of your wrist there. Each touch lingers just long enough to convey what words might cheapen. The contrast to earlier couldn't be sharper. Where desperation once drove people to grab at your cloak's tassels, now they handle the fabric almost reverently. A man who earlier tugged your sleeve to beg for his sick daughter now simply lays his hand atop yours for 3 steady heartbeats before nodding and walking away healed. The change runs deeper than manners. It's the difference between taking and thanking. Small groups still linger, reluctant to let the night end. They murmur among themselves as you pass, not petitioning anymore but simply enjoying your nearness. Someone has started a cooking fire, and its warm glow paints their faces gold as they break the last remnants of their bread. Not because they're still hungry, but to savor the miracles taste a while longer. Their laughter sounds richer now, buoyed by full bellies and grateful hearts. Children take longest to leave. Some doze against parents' shoulders, bellies full for the first time in weeks. Others rally for final games, their energy renewed by the meal. One little boy stops mid-chase to stare at you, then darts over suddenly to press something small and warm into your hand before running off. You open your palm to find his last bite of fish, saved as if for a treasured gift. The disciples follow at a respectful distance, giving people space to approach you. They observe the changed interactions with quiet wonder. Peter keeps rubbing his beard thoughtfully each time someone offers a meaningful touch instead of a desperate grab. John's eyes grow suspiciously bright when an elderly scribe bows deeply before you, something he'd never done when you taught in synagogues. As night deepens, the goodbyes grow simpler but more profound. A farmer's calloused handshake. A mother pressing her baby's foot briefly to your fingers. Young lovers shyly extending joined hands toward you in unison. These small offerings lack the intensity of earlier pleas but carry greater weight. The gratitude of people who came empty and leave full in every way. The final stragglers linger by the shore's edge, their torchlight reflecting on calm water. One by one they approach, not pushing forward anymore, but waiting their turn patiently. Their gestures speak what they don't. Hands over hearts, palms turned upward in blessing, light touches to their own lips and then toward you in the ancient sign, for your words are sweet as honey. The once needy crowd has become a community again, bound by shared wonder. When only your closest followers remain, even they interact differently. Andrew clasps your shoulder with easy affection instead of nervous energy. Nathaniel offers you the first drink from his water skin without being asked. The change extends to them too, where they once treated you as beloved teacher. Now their movements hold new reverence beneath the familiarity. Moonlight silvers the last departing backs as the final families disappear toward villages. The air still hums with residual warmth from so many grateful hearts clustered together. Where once hunger created a frantic atmosphere, now peace lingers like the pleasant drowsiness after a good meal. The disciples gather the remaining baskets quietly, their usual squabbling replaced by thoughtful silence. Even practical Philip pauses to stare at the leftover fragments before carefully securing them. The 12 baskets stand as proof, not just of miraculous multiplication, but of human hearts transformed from grasping to grateful, from desperate to dignified. As you turn toward the shore path, the last distant torches wink out one by one across the hills. But their quiet touches remain, the elderly woman's calloused fingers, the child's sticky offering, the young couple's wordless bow. Not one pair of hands reached for you tonight without being filled. And in that giving and receiving, something wholly settled over all of you that even full stomachs can't fully explain. The night breeze carries the scent of crushed grass and lingering bread as your sandals find the familiar path down to the boats. Behind you, the hillside lies empty again, but changed. Not by the leftovers ground into the soil or the flattened patches where thousands sat, but by the invisible marks of human hearts touched in ways far deeper than fabric robes ever could be. When people recall this night years hence, they may forget the taste of the fish or the exact number fed, but they'll remember how their hands learned new ways to reach and receive. The disciples board first, holding the lanterns steady as you step in. Their faces in the flickering light hold something new, not just the excitement of witnessing a miracle, but the quiet understanding that they've participated in something beyond themselves. As the boat pushes off from shore, oars dipping quietly into dark water, no one speaks. The silence says enough. It's not just full baskets they're carrying home tonight, but the memory of countless hands transformed from grasping to grateful. Each touch a story, each gesture a prayer made flesh. The hillside feels different now that the crowds have left. Not empty exactly, though the thousands have dispersed, but altered in some subtle way. The night air sits heavier here than on the path down to the shore, not with humidity but with something more intangible. Like the silence in a synagogue after sacred readings, or the hush that falls over a home when a newborn first arrives. The disciples sense it too. Their usual chatter has died away to quiet murmurs as they gather the last baskets. Twilight softens the trampled grass where families sat hours earlier. Darkened patches mark cooking fires now extinguished, their ashes still warm to the touch. Forgotten crumbs catch in the breeze, scattering across footwear and robe hems as the group moves toward the boats. The ordinary remnants take on unexpected significance, each fragment a reminder of the miracle's tactile reality. Fatigue lingers in your muscles from the long day, yet it's layered strangely with alertness. The exhaustion hasn't disappeared so much as been joined by a quiet energy that thrum beneath the surface. Your sandals scuff against well-worn paths as you walk, their familiar sound now accompanied by the disciples' whispered exchanges behind you. Their voices hold reverent curiosity more than disbelief now, the shock of witnessing the impossible giving way to thoughtful contemplation. Scientific studies note how sacred moments often involve physical sensations. Goosebumps, changed breathing patterns, altered awareness of time passing. You experience these now. The prickle at your nape where sweat-damp hair meets night air, the deliberate rhythm of your breaths, the way moonlight elongates shadows until minutes seem to stretch beyond their usual measure. The disciples' behavior shows their own grappling with the divine. Peter keeps flexing his hands, staring at his palms as if seeing them anew. John touches everything thoughtfully, the boat's rough wood, his cloak's woven threads, as though confirming reality hasn't shifted entirely. Thomas methodically counts basket fragments while shaking his head in quiet wonder. Their individual responses reflect broader truths. how encounters with holiness affect people differently based on personality and past experiences. Historical accounts describe similar moments after miracles. Crowds dispersing slowly, participants processing events in hushed tones. Ancient texts speak of thin places where heaven and earth seem closer together. Tonight's hillside carries that quality, the boundary between mundane and miraculous feeling unusually permeable long after the last loaf was shared. Torchlight flickers across the disciples' faces as they board the boats. Their movements hold new deliberateness, as if common tasks now bear symbolic weight. Philip passes a basket to Andrew with unusual care. Nathaniel steadies the mast with both hands instead of his usual one-handed grip. Even Judas hesitates before stowing the coins he'd counted automatically throughout the evening. Small actions, but telling in their changed quality. Water laps gently against hulls as you push off from shore. The sound blends with distant night creatures, owls calling across the lake, insects chirring in shoreline reeds. Nature's steady rhythms continue unaffected by the day's extraordinary events, their constancy oddly comforting. The oars dip quietly, their splash muffled by the lake's calm surface. Moonlight silvers the waves as the boats glide forward. Languid ripples fan outward from each stroke, intersecting in complex patterns before dissolving into darkness. The night feels expansive suddenly, not empty but full in ways that defy daylight understanding. Your fingers trail in the cool water, the liquid flowing effortlessly around them. The sensation mirrors today's paradox, utter weariness coexisting with boundless capacity. The disciples' quiet exchanges fade as tiredness overtakes them. One by one they settle into resting positions, John leaning against the mast, Peter draping his cloak as a makeshift pillow, Matthew curling near the provisions. Their breathing deepens and slows, yet something alert remains beneath their drowsiness. Even in sleep, their postures suggest they're still half aware of the sacred space they occupy. Memory paints overlapping images against closed eyelids, the boy's outstretched hands offering his lunch, the disciples' stunned expressions as baskets filled, the crowd's transformed faces when hunger turned to satisfaction. Each recollection carries its own weight. The ordinary loaf that multiplied, the meager fish that fed thousands, the humble crumbs that somehow sufficed. Scientists might call this state heightened awareness, the brain's response to profound experiences. But language struggles to capture the complexity, how exhaustion and renewal weave together without negating each other, how the divine presence lingers subtly yet unmistakably in the quiet aftermath. The boat rocks gently as night deepens. Distant village lights twinkle like grounded stars along the shoreline. The same breeze that earlier carried the crowd's desperate cries now rustles the sailcloth softly. Everything familiar, the lake's scent, the wood's texture beneath you, the constellations overhead, feels simultaneously ordinary and touched by something beyond ordinary understanding. The disciples sleep now, their quiet snores merging with the water's sounds. Their faces in moonlight show peace instead of the day's earlier stress lines. The 12 baskets sit secured amidships, their remaining fragments waiting to nourish tomorrow's journey. Fatigue finally overtakes you too, but it's different than before, less draining than encompassing. The good tiredness of meaningful work completed, of needy ones fed, of human hands participating in something divine. As your eyes close, the miracle's lingering presence remains, not as overwhelming force but as quiet assurance, like the lake's gentle rocking or the star's constant watch. Dawn will come soon enough with its new demands and challenges. But tonight, between the memory of hunger satisfied and the promise of morning light, this sacred pause endures. Not in dramatic signs or thunderous proclamations, but in the deep, wordless knowing that settles in bones and soul alike. That ordinary moments can hold extraordinary grace, and that 5 small loaves fed thousands while leaving 12 baskets full because with God, abundance follows wherever scarcity once ruled. The boat drifts steadily onward, carrying sleepers and fragments alike across the dark water. Night creatures call their reassurance from shore. The same breeze that once carried desperate cries now whispers peace to those listening closely enough. And beneath it all, steady and sure as the oar's rhythmic dip, thrums the enduring truth that what happened today changed more than hungry stomachs, and that the miracle continues even now, after the crowds have gone home. The sun hangs low now, painting everything in warm gold. Faces that were sharp with hunger earlier soften in this light. Lines of worry smooth out as people finish their meals. Children who cried from emptiness now yawn heavily, their eyelids drooping. Parents rock drowsy toddlers, their movements slower than before. Even the disciples look different in this glow. Less harried, more peaceful, their usual energy calmed by the day's events. Groups start gathering belongings as shadows stretch long across the grass. Farmers help elders to their feet, supporting them gently. Mothers fold scraps of cloth that held their family's portions. The movement isn't frantic like when they arrived, just steady preparations for the journey home. Some pause to press forgotten crumbs into the dirt absently, no longer needing to save every bite. The rustle of packing mixes with contented sighs and the occasional laugh. Ancient Galilee knew sunsets well. Fishermen timed their hauls by them. Shepherds led flocks home under their glow. Tonight's colors deepen gradually, starting pale yellow, shifting to peach, then fading through rose tones before reaching twilight's blue. The lake mirrors these changes, its surface catching each new hue. People linger to watch, their bodies relaxed now that hunger's urgent grip has eased. Some point out especially vivid streaks to neighbors, sharing the moment quietly. Fatigue returns to your limbs, not the draining exhaustion from before, but the solid tiredness of meaningful work completed. Your shoulders relax as the crowd thins, the weight of so many needs lightening. The disciples feel it too. Matthew rubs his neck, John stretches his arms, Peter exhales long and slow. Even young James the Less leans against a tree briefly before moving to help pack leftovers. The distribution lines have ended, conversations winding down naturally. Nearby, two women fold an oversized cloth used to gather extra bread. Their motions flow smoothly. Fold, press, fold again, the rhythm soothing to watch. A little boy chases fireflies starting to appear, his steps unsteady with drowsiness. His father watches with half-lidded eyes, making no move to hurry him. The scene holds none of morning's desperate energy, just peaceful closure as the day winds down. Torches flicker to life one by one as families prepare to leave. The flames cast warm circles on smiling faces. A grandmother's wrinkles deepen as she grins at her full grandchildren. Young couples stand closer together than propriety usually allows. Old friends clasp arms before parting ways. The light catches in children's hair as parents lift them for the walk home. The disciples move through it all, collecting the last baskets with quiet satisfaction. Historical records note Galilean evenings were communal times. Villagers would gather after work to share news before nightfall. Tonight feels like that, not a rushed escape from hunger, but a natural transition to rest. The remaining groups chat comfortably as they organize for departure. A fisherman tells colorful stories to his nodding companions. A group of women discuss tomorrow's tasks without urgency. Their voices blend softly with the evening's other sounds. Crickets starting their songs, water lapping the shore, the distant bray of a donkey. Your own breath comes easier now. The tightness in your chest from earlier, that mix of grief, exhaustion, and overwhelming need, has loosened. The breeze carries coolness from the lake, welcome after the day's heat. When you lift a hand to rub your eyes, the motion feels lighter than before. The disciples notice your weariness. Andrew presses a water skin into your hand without being asked, his touch careful on your tired fingers. The shoreline path gradually clears as families depart. Their torchlight forms a shimmering line along the road, dozens of tiny flames bobbing rhythmically with each step. The sight would have been impossible earlier when everyone pressed forward at once. Now each group moves at its own pace, helping those who walk slowly. Darkness claims the hillside in patches where crowds once sat, returning the land to its natural state bit by bit. Research confirms Galilean sunsets often included purple hues from certain wildflowers' pollen in the air. Tonight those colors blend subtly with the usual golds, soft violet streaks smudging the horizon above the lake. The disciples pause to watch as they work, their movements slowing unconsciously. Bartholomew stops mid-sentence when an especially vivid band appears, his basket half-lifted. For a long moment, everyone simply looks, fishermen and farmers alike appreciating beauty they've seen countless times, yet which feels new today. Work continues quietly once the colors fade. Thomas and Philip double-check that all baskets are secured. James organizes the remaining fragments neatly. Peter does a final scan of the area for anything left behind. Their efficiency comes easily now that the frantic pace has ended. Occasionally one will glance your way, checking if you're ready to go, their expressions patient in the torchlight. The deepest weariness settles into your bones as activity winds down. It's the kind of tiredness that comes after giving everything, when your body reminds you gently of its limits. Your feet protest slightly when you shift position, sore from standing all day. The disciples' muted conversations drift around you as they finish cleaning. Words about the miracles mingling with plans for tomorrow and amused observations about people they served. Everything smells different in the cooling air. Less of sweat and dust, more of grass and water. The fish scent that lingered earlier has faded, replaced by night-blooming flowers somewhere nearby. Even the leftover bread's aroma seems milder now, blending into the general evening freshness rather than standing out sharply. When you breathe deep, your lungs expand fully for the first time since the crowds arrived. Peace wraps around the hillside like a well-worn cloak. The disciples gather closer as full dark approaches, their usual banter softened to murmurs. Andrew yawns widely before grinning at his own weakness. John rubs his eyes but smiles when Peter teases him gently. The camaraderie between them feels deeper than before, forged not just through shared work but through witnessed wonders. They help each other with small tasks automatically, adjusting straps, sharing water, passing baskets, their movements harmonious despite fatigue. The last villager's torches disappear into the distance, their glow shrinking to pinpricks then vanishing around bends in the road. Stars emerge gradually overhead, first the brightest few, then dozens, then countless specks of light against deepening blue. The lake reflects them imperfectly, its small waves breaking the images into shimmering fragments. A night bird calls somewhere along the shore, its cry echoing slightly before fading. The emptiness in your stomach makes itself known now that the crowd has gone. It gnaws gently but persistently, a reminder that while you fed thousands, you never stopped to eat yourself. Your body keeps score even when your mind focuses elsewhere. Dehydration tingles at the edges of your awareness too. Your throat feels dry after hours of speaking over murmuring crowds. You sip from a water skin, the lukewarm water easing but not eliminating the sensation. Weariness settles deeper into your muscles with each step toward the shore. Feet that carried you tirelessly all day now protest each movement. Sandals that usually feel light drag slightly against the dirt path. The small aches of prolonged standing announce themselves. A twinge in your lower back, stiffness behind your knees, shoulders that would benefit from stretching. Divine work doesn't erase human limitations, it unfolds through them. Behind you, the disciples buzz with leftover energy. Their voices weave together, excited recounts of distributing food, awed whispers about impossible multiplication, practical discussions about storing leftovers for tomorrow's journey. Footsteps rustle through grass as they follow, their pace uneven in the growing dark. Someone stumbles over an unseen rock, cursing softly before laughing at their own clumsiness. The sound carries that particular lightness of people who've witnessed wonders. Historical records describe how ancient people recovered from long walks and demanding days. Fishermen soaked their feet in cool lake water after hauling nets. Farmers massaged pressed olives into cracked hands at day's end. Travelers rested at way stations where donkeys could be unloaded and sandals removed. Tonight holds none of those comforts, just the steady plod toward boats and whatever rest they might offer. Fatigue makes the path feel longer than it is. Familiar landmarks seem farther apart. That twisted olive tree you passed earlier, the cluster of rocks where children played. Your mind notes them absently while your body calculates remaining steps. The disciples' chatter fades in and out of your awareness. Loud bursts of enthusiasm followed by stretches of companionable quiet as everyone conserves energy for walking. Moonlight silvering the grass becomes your focus. It outlines each blade distinctly as shadows lengthen across the hillside. The effect is fleeting, beautiful but impossible to capture fully before the angle shifts again. You match your breathing to your footsteps without thinking about it. Inhale for 2 steps, exhale for 3. The rhythm grounds you even as weariness tugs at your edges. Andrew's voice cuts through your reverie. Rabbi, He offers his arm instinctively when you miss a step, his grip firm on your elbow. The concern in his face mirrors what you feel in your own body, that mix of lingering exhilaration and bone-deep tiredness. You nod thanks but wave off further assistance. This weariness must be walked through, not circumvented. The terrain slopes gently downward toward the lake. Knees that ache protest the incline despite its mildness. You slow slightly, letting gravity assist rather than fight your momentum. Pebbles skitter underfoot, their tiny clicks joining the night's other sounds. Rustling cloaks, occasional yawns, the distant cry of a night bird over the water. Peter retrieves forgotten sandal straps ahead, his large hands scooping them from the dust absently. He pauses to adjust the load in his arms, both baskets and leftover provisions requiring careful balancing. The mundane task contrasts sharply with the day's miracles, yet somehow fits perfectly in this liminal space between wonder and weariness. Darkness settles more deeply with each passing minute. Stars emerge hesitantly at first, just the brightest few, then dozens more as eyes adjust. Their light helps outline the path where torchlight doesn't reach. Shapes blend together at the edges of vision, rocks becoming shadows, becoming memory. Your stomach growls audibly, drawing amused glances from nearby disciples. James the Less rummages in a basket and passes forward some remaining bread without comment. The crust feels rough against your palm, its texture familiar from hours of tearing and sharing. You eat slowly, savoring each small bite, while continuing to walk. The bread sits heavily at first, then gradually eases the gnawing sensation as it settles. Fatigue makes thoughts slow and meandering. You recall fragments of conversations from earlier, a widow's gratitude, a child's delighted laugh, the disciples' initial skepticism giving way to dawning belief. These memories float through your mind without sequence or urgency, like leaves drifting on a calm pond. The disciples' quiet voices behind you form a gentle counterpoint, their whispered excitement about today mingling with practical plans for tomorrow. Cooler air near the lake raises goosebumps on your arms. The temperature change feels jarring after the day's heat. You rub your arms absently, the motion sparking small muscle protests from shoulders still tight with residual tension. Breathing comes easier here though. The air carries moisture from the water, a welcome contrast to the dusty hillside. John trips over an unseen root, his muttered curse carrying on the still air. Philip steadies him automatically before returning to his discussion with Bartholomew about storing leftover fish. Their practical concerns, preventing spoilage, calculating portions for travel, anchor the moment in normality despite the day's extraordinary events. The boats appear gradually as you approach, dark shapes against slightly lighter water. Their familiar forms promise rest, however brief. Peter and Andrew hurry ahead to prepare them, their movements efficient in the moonlight. Others linger momentarily, stretching stiff limbs or adjusting loads before boarding. Silence descends naturally as everyone gathers near the shoreline. The day's labor and wonders settle into bones and memory alike, not needing discussion now, just quiet acknowledgement. Waves lap gently against hulls, their rhythm steady and reassuring. When you finally step into the boat, the wood feels solid beneath your aching feet. Sitting down brings immediate relief to tired legs, the small pleasure amplified by hours of standing. Water rocks the boat gently as others board. The disciples stow baskets carefully before finding their own places, some sitting upright, others curling where they can. No one speaks as the last preparations are made. Words feel unnecessary after all that's been shared today. Oars dip quietly, their splash muffled by the lake's calm surface. Your stomach settles as the bread does its work. Muscles begin relaxing properly now that they're no longer bearing weight. The disciples' breathing evens out around you, some already dozing despite uncomfortable positions. Ahead, moonlight outlines the distant shore where solitude and rest await. The journey continues, but for now, in this quiet moment between miracles and tomorrow's demands, even weariness feels like a kind of blessing.
And so, the crowd is fed. Not just with bread and fish, but with wonder and enoughness, and the quiet mystery of a miracle that unfolded in ordinary hands. As the sun dips lower and the baskets come back full, you finally sit. The air is soft, the people are satisfied, And for just a moment, there is peace, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that settles quietly into your bones. If you found comfort in this journey, I'd love for you to like this video. It really helps more people find these gentle, faith-filled stories. And if you want more moments like this, feel free to subscribe and join our little nighttime community. I'd also love to know what part of this story stayed with you the most. Leave a comment if you feel like it. Now, I'll leave you with the sound of soft rain and a dark screen for the next 10 minutes or so. No voices, no more words. Just space to rest, reflect, and drift gently towards sleep. Good night, and may God richly bless you